A couple in their late 40s quit their jobs, sold their Nashville house, and moved to 10 raw acres in the Ozarks. Their neighbors thought they had lost it completely. 2 years later, their monthly bills are around $450. But their first year cost $87,000, and most of that came from expenses they never saw coming. This video breaks down exactly what it costs to go off-grid, from land and shelter to water, power, permits, and the hidden expenses that trip people up every single time. By the end, you'll know whether this makes financial sense for you. For a lot of people it does. You can't go off-grid without somewhere to actually go. So let's start there. The good news is that land in America is still remarkably affordable if you know where to look. The bad news is that where to look matters enormously. In states like Missouri, Arkansas, West Virginia, Tennessee, and parts of Maine and Kansas, you can find raw rural land for between $1,000 and $4,000 per acre. A workable off-grid property, somewhere between 5 and 20 acres, lands you in the range of $10,000 to $60,000, depending on location, terrain, and what's already on it. But here's where people get stung. Cheap land often means no road access, no water rights, or zoning restrictions that make building on it essentially illegal. Some parcels look like a deal until you discover the county requires a minimum 5-acre lot for any permitted structure. Others sit in a floodplain that your insurance company will have strong feelings about. So before you fall in love with any piece of land, you need 3 things. A percolation test to confirm the soil handles waste properly. A title search to confirm you actually own what you think you're buying. And a phone call to the county planning office to ask what you're actually allowed to build there. None of that is optional. All of it is cheaper than buying the wrong land. Realistic land budget for a solid, buildable 10-acre parcel in a good off-grid state runs $30,000 to $40,000. Call it $35,000 as your planning number. Now, you have the land, but you need somewhere to sleep on it. And this is where budgets vary wildly. When it comes to shelter, you have 3 realistic paths, and each one has a very different price tag. Path 1 is the full DIY build. If you have construction skills or a brother-in-law who owes you several favors, and you're willing to put in the labor yourself, so you can build a solid 400 to 800 square foot cabin for $20,000 to $50,000 in materials. This takes longer than you think. Budget 12 to 24 months if you're working it on weekends. Path 2 is a prefab cabin kit. Companies like Jamaica Cottage Shop, Conestoga Log Cabins, and Summerwood Products sell kits with pre-cut lumber, hardware, and build instructions. These run $15,000 to $40,000 for the kit itself. You still handle the foundation and interior finishing, but the hard thinking is mostly done for you. Path 3 is a yurt or alternative structure. A quality yurt from Pacific Yurts or Rainier Yurts runs $20,000 to $35,000 installed. Faster to set up, often easier to permit in rural counties. And if you've ever wanted to live in something that looks like it belongs in a Tolkien novel, here's your chance. But here's the cost that trips people up: the foundation. Whether you pour a concrete slab, build on piers, or go with a rubble trench foundation, you're looking at $5,000 to $20,000, depending on your soil conditions, climate, and structure size. Then add interior finishing, insulation, windows, doors, walls, flooring, a basic kitchen setup. Budget another $10,000 to $25,000 for a simple but comfortable interior. Total realistic shelter budget, $40,000 to $90,000. For anyone going the kit plus DIY finishing route, the sweet spot lands around $55,000. You now have land and a place to sleep, but you don't have water. And that's where things get genuinely interesting. Water is the one variable that kills more off-grid plans than anything else, not because it's technically complicated, but because people consistently underestimate what it costs. You have three main options: a drilled well, a rainwater harvesting system, or a spring catchment if you're lucky enough to have one on your land. A drilled well is the most reliable and the most expensive. Drilling costs run $15 to $30 per foot, depending on local geology. The national average well depth is around 150 feet, which puts your drilling cost at $5,000 to $15,000 before you add a pump, pressure tank, and filtration. Add $2,000 to $5,000 for the mechanical system and filtration. If you hit granite and need to drill past 300 feet, costs can double quickly. Rainwater harvesting runs $3,000 to $8,000 for a complete setup with gutters, a first flush diverter, storage tanks, and filtration. It works well in areas with consistent annual rainfall, but many states have historically regulated residential rainwater collection. That's changing, but confirm your state's current rules before you design around this system. A spring catchment, for properties lucky enough to have a year-round spring, can be the most affordable path. A gravity-fed spring setup runs $1,000 to $4,000. The catch is obvious. You can't plan for a spring that isn't there. Water budget, realistic range, $8,000 to $20,000. Water coming in is only half the story. You need a plan for water going out. Waste management is uncomfortable to budget for, and even more uncomfortable to ignore. You have two main paths: a conventional septic system, or an alternative setup using a composting toilet and a gray water system. A conventional septic installation, including the tank and leach field, runs $3,000 to $10,000 in most rural areas. Your percolation test is what confirms whether your soil can support one at all. A composting toilet is cheaper and, frankly, far better suited to off-grid use. A quality unit from Nature's Head or Sunmar runs $900 to $2,000. Add a simple gray water system for sink and shower drainage, and you've handled waste management for under $5,000 in most cases. The challenge is that some counties still require a conventional septic system regardless of what you install inside. This is the exact situation where 30 minutes of research on your specific county's code can save you $6,000. Waste management budget, $4,000 to $12,000 depending on what your county requires. Now let's talk about the section that actually excites people. Power. Solar gets the headline here, and for good reason. Panel prices have dropped roughly 90% since 2010. A system that would have cost $80,000 in equipment 15 years ago now runs $10,000 to $25,000 for a setup that comfortably powers a modest off-grid home. A realistic off-grid solar setup for a 600 to 800 square foot home, paired with a wood stove for heat and propane for cooking, looks like this: 6 to 8 panels, a lithium battery bank, a charge controller, and an inverter. With professional installation, $12,000 to $20,000 for a complete, functional system. DIY the installation yourself and bring that down to $8,000 to $14,000. A backup propane generator is worth adding to your first-year budget while you're figuring out your actual energy needs. A solid 3,500 watt propane unit runs $800 to $1,500. For heat, a quality wood stove from Joe Tool, Vermont Castings, or U.S. stove runs $1,500 to $4,000 installed. And if you're on forested land and willing to cut and split your own firewood, your fuel cost is essentially sweat equity. Power budget total: $14,000 to $26,000. Now for the section that surprises people more than any other and trips up the ones who skipped their research. Permits are not the most exciting topic in this video, but skipping this research is how people end up spending an extra $20,000 they didn't plan for. Building permits for a rural structure typically run $500 to $3,000, depending on county and project scope. But it's not just the fee. Many counties require engineered blueprints stamped by a licensed structural engineer. That adds $1,500 to $5,000. Some have minimum square footage requirements that effectively make tiny homes illegal. Some counties in certain states require a conventional septic system, regardless of your composting setup. The most accommodating states for off-grid permitting include Tennessee, Missouri, Texas, and parts of New Mexico and Colorado. The most restrictive tend to be in the Northeast and Pacific Northwest, where rural building codes are enforced closely, even on remote land. Total permit and legal budget, $2,000 to $8,000. Hire a local contractor or permit expediter for one consultation before you buy land. That single conversation might be the best $200 you spend in this whole process. And on that note, let's talk about the cost that keeps coming every single month. The fantasy version of off-grid living is that the garden feeds you completely, and your monthly costs drop to almost nothing. The truth is more nuanced than that. And also, still pretty good. A quarter-acre garden, managed with reasonable care, can supply 50 to 75% of your vegetables for the year in most climates. Add 4 to 6 laying hens, and you've covered eggs essentially for free after the initial coop setup. Your ongoing seed costs, chicken feed, and garden supplies run about $800 to $1,500 per year. You'll still buy staples: rice, flour, cooking oil, dried beans, coffee. Nobody's giving up coffee. Here's what monthly costs actually look like for a household of 2 once everything is established. Property taxes on rural acreage, $50 to $150 per month. Food, groceries to supplement the garden, $300 to $500 per month. Propane for cooking and backup heat, $50 to $100 per month. Internet via rural cellular or satellite, $80 to $150 per month. Vehicle costs and fuel, not because you still live somewhere, $200 to $400 per month. Ongoing maintenance and supplies, $100 to $200 per month. Compare that to the Bureau of Labor Statistics figure for average U.S. household expenditure, over $5,100 per month. And the math starts to look pretty compelling. But there's a category that almost never makes it into these budgets, and it's the one that sends people scrambling in year 1. Real off-grid living requires tools that the average city person does not own, and some of them cost real money. A functional off-grid toolkit includes a chainsaw, a quality generator, a full-hand tool set, a come-along for moving things that don't want to move, and ideally a trailer. If your land requires it, a tractor or ATV. Budget $5,000 to $15,000 to build this out from scratch, depending on what you already own. Vehicle maintenance goes up when you're driving gravel roads and dirt tracks regularly. Budget 20 to 30% more than you currently spend on upkeep. Healthcare is the one people most avoid putting in their spreadsheet. Without employer coverage, a mid-range family health plan through the ACA marketplace runs $400 to $800 per month. This is not optional. Budget it like a utility. The last item is an emergency fund, and it matters more than people expect. When your well pump dies at 9 p.m. on a Saturday in January, you need to be able to pay someone to fix it without a crisis. A $10,000 to $15,000 emergency reserve is not a luxury in this lifestyle. It's load-bearing infrastructure. All right, you have every number. Let's add it all up. Here's everything laid out. Land, 10 solid acres, $35,000. Shelter, it's a kit cabin with foundation and interior, $55,000. Water system, $12,000. Waste management, $6,000. Power, solar plus wood stove, $18,000. Permits and legal, $4,000. Tools and equipment, $10,000. Emergency fund, $12,000. Garden and livestock startup, $2,000. Contingency, because there is always something, $12,000. The realistic all-in number for a fully functional, properly permitted, comfortable off-grid setup lands somewhere between $140,000 and $200,000, depending on your choices and your location. Now, before you close the tab, here's the context that changes how this number feels. The median U.S. home price right now sits around $420,000. A financed house in a mid-sized city, including the mortgage, property taxes, utilities, and HOA fees, costs the average American $3,500 to $4,500 per month. That's $42,000 to $54,000 a year, for the foreseeable future. The off-grid life we just priced out carries monthly costs of $780 to $1,500. Spread that $166,000 upfront investment over 10 years, and you're paying about $1,400 a month to carry it. But it's yours outright. No landlord can raise the rent. No lease comes up for renewal, and nobody is sending you a letter in November telling you what it costs to stay. The people who make this work are not the ones with the most money going in. They're the ones who researched the right land, planned for the costs that actually exist, built their systems in the right order, and didn't buy cheap land in a county that made building illegal. The math works. The systems exist. The dream is genuinely within reach for a regular person with a plan and 18 months of patience. So here's where things stand. Going off the grid is expensive to start. It's genuinely affordable to sustain. And for a lot of people who are tired of handing over $3,500 a month to live in someone else's building, the numbers make a lot of sense.